Hi, everyone. We just opened the webinar space. So as our attendees are coming in, we're going to just kick off this event because we have a pretty packed agenda. So everyone, thank you so much. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from our team to you, wherever in the world that you're joining us from today. My name is Jamie Wen-Besson, and I am a Senior Gender Program Manager at IUCN, where among my duties, I help oversee the Gender-Based Violence and Environment Linkages Center and the RISE Grants Challenge. Now, on Monday, the Globe kicked off a week of various events marking Mother Earth Day. So we thank you for choosing our event to learn more about the RISE Grants Challenge today. Next slide, please. And before we get started, we're going to do some virtual housekeeping together. First of all, today's event will be conducted in English, French, and Spanish. So please do select your language via the globe on your Zoom screen at the bottom and select your language. This event will also be recorded and shared very soon. And we have an amazing series of speakers. So please, along the way, be sure to share your questions for panelists via the Q&A function in Zoom. We, the staff, will monitor and collect as many of your questions as we can and ask them. And a big thank you to the CEC and WCEL commissions for their support in amplifying today's event. I also want to extend gratitude to all of our speakers, as well as our amazing IUCN team, especially Rumani, Laura, and Jason, who have been instrumental in putting today's event together. And a major note of gratitude to our partners at USAID and at NORAD for their support to the RISE Grants Challenge. Without their leadership, this work would simply not be possible. And finally, another big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in today. Slide, please. Now, before we continue, we do want to be mindful and remind you that today's event relates to gender-based violence, which can be difficult and challenging. So we do urge you to please take care, and we thank you again for being here. Next slide, please. And we have a packed agenda today, as I mentioned, filled with dynamic announcements, launches, and discussions. You can see a quick overview of that on your screen, and we're just going to get right to it. So let's dive in and go to the next slide. So first, if you can please bear with me, I'd like to start with a little bit of background for today's event. As many of you know, IUCN published a groundbreaking study on gender-based violence and environmental linkages in 2020. Since that time, this work has taken the globe by storm with increasing academia, reporting, and policy attention to the topic. Our primary finding, our main finding has been that gender-based violence is systematically used to shape and control rights, roles, opportunities, and responsibilities that women and girls and people of diverse gender identities have in relation to the environment. On a personal note, gender-based violence first touched my own life when I was 8 years old. And for many people like myself, survivorship has been largely a silent, private, and isolated experience despite its prevalence. For this reason, we're so grateful to the Globe for the receptiveness to the research and the environmental policy and fieldwork that has taken this on. For far too long, in gender and environmental conservation and climate action, it's been relegated to swinging a pendulum between environmental vulnerabilities and environmental leadership. And so progress frequently becomes a perpetual wheel that turns in relative place. Until we address gender-based violence, until we address gender discrimination, until we address the unequal burden of care work that women and girls conduct, we cannot meaningfully improve our collective efforts to improve gender equality, support women's empowerment, or improve the efficacy of our environmental actions. Just a few examples by what I mean. In a study of 980 women in ocean sciences, 78% of respondents reported experiencing sexual harassment in the marine science workplace and learning environments. Similarly, a 3-year study surveying 5,300 women who achieved engineering degrees found that 38% left the engineering careers or never started due to work cultures that prioritize men over women from the very start, including within their academic studies and their internship experiences. And they also cited pervasive environments of sexual harassment. So, as a small example, whenever we talk about encouraging women and girls to join STEM careers, I hope we give pause and reflect on their realities and the conditions of these spaces more thoughtfully. In our own research this year at IUCN, we reviewed the data that we've periodically collected over the last 10 years and found that it will take 162 years for women to reach gender parity in leading environmental ministries. And this figure, 162 years, matches exactly assessments by the World Economic Forum on closing gender gaps in laws and the economy. And women environmental human rights defenders not only face the same threats of murder and criminalization that their male peers face, they are also subjected to threats and acts of sexual violence, and also the removal of their children from their families as a threat. And Indigenous women are disproportionately impacted by these threats. In agriculture, sexual assault is so common. Fields are sometimes called green motels in the Americas. And in East Africa, sex for fish is so common, it has a name called jaboya, which in the local language means customer. And in Nigeria, sexual exploitation for land and natural resources also has a name called kwembe shakwembe, which means sometimes, sometimes. So also, in many parts of the globe, attempts by environmental projects to work on gender equality have resulted in backlash against women, leaving well-intended projects gaping at their social and environmental goals. We also saw this in our own IUCN global research, with 59% of over 300 environmental practitioners having noted gender-based violence taking place during environmental projects. We could, of course, go on, but suffice it to say, the challenges are daunting and the urgency is clear. Next slide, please. So the RISE Grants Challenge was created in response to our research findings, providing funding and technical support to environmental programs to learn about gender-based violence linkages with the environment and how to address them. Created by USAID in 2019, IUCN took the helm running our first call in 2022. And as you can see from the right-hand side of the screen here, the demand for support is enormous and surging all the time. So our goal is to work with grant winners to develop learning for global policy and practical application. Next slide, please. So today, the RISE Grants Challenge is a family now of 18 projects, which have worked in wildlife conservation, indigenous managed forestry, fisheries, mining, and other sectors. And you'll meet our new winners today. Next slide, please. And I also want to mention that through RISE, we are learning a lot. And behind the scenes, we're working to distill the experiences into tools that we aim to start rolling out later this year. So please do stay in tuned and in touch to come along for the learning with us. And you can see here just a preview of some of the learning that we are currently analyzing, which spans from engaging men and traditional leaders to working in community-based planning, creating safe spaces, championing institutional change to address gender-based violence, and also to building relationships with the GBV referral pathways from the standpoint of environmental organizations. Slide, please. And I'd be remiss not to take the opportunity to share a little bit about RISE impact to date. So far, 98,145 people have been reached via RISE projects on the ground. Last year alone, 5 projects trained 1,128 people on gender-based violence and environment linkages, and also conducted awareness-raising activities that reached 5,667 people. And what I really want to emphasize here is that prior to IUCN's research on this topic, there were scant environmental conservation and climate projects directly addressing gender-based violence as a barrier. And to think that just 5 years later, there's nearly 100,000 people in communities around the world that have been working together to peel the layers of taboo back and pioneer learning on how we can better safeguard environmental action and promote improved human and women's rights. So RISE has, of course, generated some results, and we can't go through all of them, but I can share a few highlights. In a RISE project from the past, a pilot that utilized control groups saw a decrease in sexual harassment from 32 to 19%, while sexual coercion and extractives halved from 12 to 6% in areas that used a uniquely developed interconnectus model. In an indigenous managed forest, indigenous women created their own GBV watch groups and continued to work with local traditional leaders in the aftermath of a RISE project's completion. In a wildlife project, a focal point system was created, acting as trainers and support providers to address sexual assault and harassment in wildlife work. So there's a lot of these examples that we're hoping to share more information about in the coming year. And the Rice Grants Challenge has also supported its cohort organizations to improve institutional capacities. For example, through RISE, organizations have hired full-time gender equality staff for the first time, with these positions having been sustained after the close of RISE projects. And through RISE, environmental organizations have created brand new or improved existing sexual harassment and abuse policies, grievance redress mechanism, and safeguarding policies to respond to the challenges of gender-based violence. I'll also add that the Rice family has been growing its policy influence from helping launch, inform, influence major national policy processes, global initiatives, to influencing global environmental finance mechanisms, to contributing to global biodiversity policymaking and advocacy at national levels. We've worked with both past and current RISE winners to affect change. And again, we won't be able to go through all the examples, but just as a small snapshot, you can see here photos of Trong Nguyen, RISE 2019 winner with Vice President Kamala Harris, helping launch the US government's WISE initiative on women in sustainable environments in late 2023. You can see Samantha Munagandu outside the Zambian parliament the day that she presented RISE learning on GBV to the government. You can also see Dr. Elizabeth Imti at COP28 giving testimony to global leaders. And you can also see a photo of women rangers speaking up and out with the support of RISE leaders like Joyce Peshu. And these are just some of the many faces we refer to when we are talking about our RISE family that we are very proud of. Next slide, please. Now, moving on into the next portion of our event, we are here to open today's event with a fantastic discussion. It is my immense pleasure to have Razan Al-Mubarak, Bama Ethrea, and Board Vegar Soyel with us today for a high-level roundtable discussion and also for the announcement of the newest cohort of RISE. And so before we get started, I would like to take a moment to briefly introduce our very distinguished panel. Razan Khalifa Al Mubarak is a United Arab Emirates native who has for more than 20 years supported her country's efforts to realize a more sustainable future while spearheading progressive environmental protection, species conservation, and global climate action by leading various environmental organizations. She was elected president of the International Union for Conservation of Nature in September 2021 and also serves as UN climate change high-level champion for the COP28 presidency, which took place recently in Dubai last year. We also have Bama Ethrea, who serves as the Deputy Assistant Administrator for the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Hub and the Inclusive Development Hub in USAID's Bureau for Inclusive Growth, Partnerships, and Innovation. She is an expert on international labor issues, gender and social inclusion, and business and human rights. Between 2019 and 2021, she was an Economic Inequality Fellow at Open Society Foundations and Senior Advisor on Gender Equity and Inclusion to Louds Foundation. And prior to this, she served as USAID's Senior Specialist for Labor, where she helped advance USAID's approach to gender and social inclusion. And we also have Bård Vegar Soyel, who is the Director General of the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, or NORAD, since January 2020. Prior to this, he served as Secretary General of WWF Norway, and from 2001 to 2017, Bård held senior positions in Norwegian politics, including as Member of Parliament, Minister of Education, Minister of the Environment, among other roles. He is Deputy Board Chair of the Fritt Ord, or Free Word Foundation, and a board member of Norway's second biggest renewable energy company, Hafslund. So I welcome our speakers. If you can turn your cameras on, we'd love to open this panel and welcome you. And I thank you again so much for sharing your time with us today. And if we can actually get started, I would love to actually ask the first question to Ms. Al-Mubarak. Razan, you have such a prolific career and you wear so many hats as IUCN's president and also as the COP28 climate change high-level champion. You have been strongly advocating for gender and youth and Indigenous peoples in climate action and spaces. Can you share with us as IUCN president why addressing gender-based violence and environmental linkages matters to you and also to our union, and how IUCN's work in this space, including through the Rice Grants Challenge, has impacted IUCN?
First of all, wanted to take this opportunity to thank you, Jamie, and the team for having me here with you today. It's incredible bravery such as yours, taking a personal adversity and really turning into a global movement. So really thank you, Jamie, and your incredible colleagues. I also wanted to say that it's such a pleasure to be here on this panel with Dr. Athria. I know that you've inspired us all to really recognize and understand that gender work matters. It matters at a personal level, it matters at a professional level, and if we want to see the global outcomes that we need, we cannot leave women and girls behind. I also want to just mention a few words. I have not had yet the pleasure to meet you, Mr. Soliel, in person, but really, thank you for your incredible support. And it's lovely to be accompanied with all of you here for the announcement of the new cohort of organizations that have risen through the Rise Grants Challenge. So Jamie, throughout my career, promoting inclusivity, the advancement of women's leadership has been paramount. As president of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, it's really been a privilege and an honor, and I'm incredibly proud to represent an organization that truly and authentically brings gender equality and women's rights to the heart of conservation and climate action, as really a prerequisite towards achieving our mission and our vision, which is a just world that values and conserves nature. And as the UN high-level champion for climate change for COP28, my priorities lie in the climate-nature nexus, as well as enhancing inclusivity. With a particular focus, as you said, on empowering women and girls, including and ensuring Indigenous people's voices and actions are taken into consideration when we consider our climate policies, as well as ensuring that we collectively deliver on gender-responsive outcomes. But to do all of this, we must ensure that women and girls can actually safely engage and be equal partners without the fear or the risk of experiencing gender-based violence. So you also mentioned, Jamie, about IUCN's flagship study. And it was, as you said, a first comprehensive study. There was a lot of data on gender-based violence and environmental linkages, but they were far too little and far too spread around. And this was commissioned by the USAID, and this was really eye-opening for all of us, not just the ones, myself working in the field of conservation, but I believe even those institutions and organizations working on gender issues. So our survey of 300 environmental practitioners conducted as part of the study found out that a staggering 59% had observed gender-based violence taking place in and around environmental programs and projects. But yet the vast majority lacked the understanding on how it's related to their work and how to engage on the subject. So this was a huge gap. And as a union of more than 1,400 member organizations, 16,000 scientists and experts, we had to act. Why? Because IUCN, as you said, it's a unique platform. It's an intergovernmental organization with civil society, government, states, and indigenous peoples. We are trusted to advance on environmental practices and knowledge. So if not us, then who? And this enabled us to really strengthen an institutional framework, to really do what is necessary and needed. And that is around three key areas. One, integrate provisions for gender-based violence prevention, as well as the response. Secondly, working with our partners to really raise global awareness and advocacy around this issue, whilst providing technical support to our members and our partners, as well as we've been doing now, and this is a great event to showcase, providing grants to local environmental organizations that are working on these issues through the RISE Grant Challenge. So really, thank you again, and looking forward to hearing from Dr. Athria and Sohail.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Razan. And I really love what you said about truth and authenticity, and the call to the union to respond to that. So thank you so much. And that's a perfect segue to my next question, which for Dr. Athrea, for Bama. As Razan mentioned, USAID was such an instrumental partner in commissioning the research that gave birth to the creation of the Rights Grants Challenge. And USAID was actually the creator of the challenge in 2019 and has been working very closely with IUCN since we took over management in 2022. Wanted to ask, has the learning from the Rights Grants Challenge impacted USAID's approaches and efforts in the last 5 years? And if so, if you could share with us a few examples on how.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And I will start as Razan did by thanking you. I think your leadership has been really important in this whole journey over the last few years. Razan, thank you so much for your leadership. I actually have very little to add because that overview that you provided of the journey we've been on together for the past few years was just so both succinct, but also so thorough and so accurate in describing the journey that we've been on together. I do want to start, and I think just to add a little bit of flavor for the hundreds of people who have joined us today from around the world, with a quote from anthropologist Margaret Mead, quite a famous quote. Many of you have doubtless heard this before. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And the reason that quote came to mind this morning is when I think about where we were in 2019, when we first started to collaborate with IUCN on this topic. It really was the work of a few people on USAID's side, on IUCN's side, that were quite prescient in recognizing the moment and the opportunity that we had. And it's really just been a few people that have opened, as Razan put it, opened the eyes of so many others around the world by just taking those thoughtful, careful steps to document what was happening. In 2019, we did have, I think, an opportunity to elevate attention because of the global attention to gender-based violence. And we had a moment, and I think we had some individuals that recognized that it was a timely opportunity to take a look at the nexus of gender-based violence with sectors where we weren't really previously thinking about violence. In USAID, we had launched a process to develop a new and expanded approach to preventing sexual exploitation and abuse as a result of rising global awareness of the extent of SEA, sexual exploitation and abuse, in international development. However, those efforts globally were highly focused on sectors where we expected to see violence, humanitarian assistance, peacekeeping, conflict situations. The small group of committed people recognized that we needed to look at traditional development sectors as well, where we weren't used to thinking about those sectors as violent, such as biodiversity, conservation, climate-related efforts. And so the study took place. The study was path-breaking. One of the reasons it was path-breaking is because it was careful and intentional. It was not sensationalistic. It was careful. It was thorough in documenting the challenges, and it therefore gave us a very solid basis to start to move our investments to address the problems that were identified. We worked together with you to create the Resilient, Inclusive, and Sustainable Environments, or RISE Challenge, which we are, of course, celebrating today, to address this nexus, but again, in a careful way, looking at local efforts, looking at local actors, and ensuring that we were looking at things like the gender norms in which these initiatives were embedded. I am really pleased to be able to share with you today that this careful work has now had spillover effects into a number of US government-wide strategies and approaches. The US strategy to prevent and respond to gender-based violence globally, which was updated last year, actually in 2022. The USAID climate strategy, which was adopted in 2022. USAID's 2023 revision of our gender equality and women's empowerment policy, and a new US strategy released last year to respond to the effects of climate change on women. All of these see the fingerprints of the work we have done through the research we've done together and the grant making. I'll just conclude this round of remarks by just acknowledging and thanking NORAD. We are so excited that you are joining USAID in supporting this RISE Grants Challenge for the next round of grants. Very excited to be announcing some of the winners today. Thank you so much once again. I'll turn it back to you, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Mama. And I really love what you said about the thoughtfulness. And truly, that's been embedded throughout our partner organizations. And it's been a fantastic collaboration and work together. And we're so thrilled that it's been incorporated throughout so many pathways in US government and USAID. And that's a perfect segue to turn a question to board. As Bama just mentioned, NORAD recently joined the Rice Grants Challenge to expand knowledge and investment, specifically for this upcoming round that we'll talk about, to work in the fisheries sector. And so we wanted to ask, could you tell us a little bit more about NORAD and its interest to invest in the Rice Grants Challenge, and also its desire to support taking forward actions in fishery sectors in particular?
Yes, absolutely, Jamie. And first, also from me, thanks for the collaboration so far, and great to listen to insightful comments from Razan and Bama here. I hope to meet you in person someday during this journey we'll do together. So let me maybe take as a point of departure, the huge challenges that the global oceans face and how they really affect us all, right? So more than 60% of marine nature is now, strongly and negatively changed by humans. It affects the biodiversity. Climate change is changing the temperature, making the oceans more acidic, with consequences for ecosystems like coral reefs and so on. And of course, plastic pollution is a major and a rather new, huge problem for the world's oceans. At the same time, we know that oceans are at the heart of solutions for many of the world's problems, for food security, for more for climate and biodiversity on land. We have to change our food consumption. But while fisheries and seafood can play an important role, we also know that as much as 94% of the world's fishing stocks are either overfished or stretched. So the obvious solution is to involve in more sustainable fishing practices and to evolve and change the way we do fisheries worldwide. And of course, Norway is an ocean nation. We have historically and even now also totally relied on fisheries. We have a lot of competence on issues. So it's been natural for us to develop on these issues in our international development work as well. But gender equality and women's rights is also very much an important part of our modern history as a nation. And I think all big fisheries nations intuitively know that gender equality, women's rights, has been an issue. It's a difficult issue actually in fisheries. We know it from our history, even from cases in modern times. And like you said, Jamie, we know it from examples, whether it be in Kenya or in Nigeria, as you mentioned as well. A few years ago, we did a report, or we commissioned a report on the link between gender equality and climate change. And then we found that there is very little data available in terms of fisheries. There are examples, studies, cases like the ones we've touched upon here, but too little overall. And I think that, like also Obama touched upon, we have to think differently about how we engage in gender equality and make sure that we address issues of power, gender roles, practices across the board, also in important environmental and climate-related issues. That was a bit, the starting point for addressing these issues in the fisheries sector more specifically. And of course, IUCN, when you came along, you're a trusted, long-standing partner, that huge and important international organization. So I think it was a quite easy choice to partner with you or to engage with you and USAID, an organization we also work with on many issues across the board on the rice challenge. So that's a bit of the background, and now we're really looking forward to not only announcing the winners here today, but to working with you in the years to come.
Thank you so much, Board. And I think that's really important context for us to remember about the state of the globe, the importance of our marine resources and fisheries, and the role that dynamics that power play in the resulting spillover impacts and things like food security. So that's really great. And also to hear that NORAD has been looking at the gender issues and looking to try and innovate ways to take the steps forward to go beyond what has been the normal common practices, and to do that with us together. And so turning a question back, Razan, I'd like to ask you, what role can IUCN play to further elevate attention to these issues, and especially the work that the rice grantee organizations are doing to drive change?
Thanks again. I mean, I think in general, and as so eloquently spoken by my colleague at NORAD, we are dealing with very complex global issues. And the failure is when you have institutions myopically trying to address one aspect of the problem. And what we're seeing today is this recognition for a really much wider multi-stakeholder approach, where one genuinely, and I say authentically, listens to the participants who are addressing these issues at the local level, and recognizing that things are, sometimes we try to oversimplify, but things are nuanced, and every local context will be very different. And so the art is, how do we build on this mosaic of experience and ensure that we put in enough safeguards to protect women? And this is where I believe IUCN comes in, really to advocate and elevate the issue, strategically do that through our partners, through our network, through our own staff that are placed all around the world. But it's one thing to continue to advocate, but we need to lead by example. We need to ensure that what we're learning is integrated in the projects that we are managing. And again, super proud to say that we are replicating these learning by doing. We are embedding gender safety assessments in our projects. We are embedding gender safety safeguarding measures. We are ensuring that we build capacity with our partners, with our local institutions on the ground, on prevention, on mitigation, as well as understanding what are the levels and when do you respond, is very critical. And I'm proud to say that I believe that as we work together with our partners, with USAID, with NORAD, we are also ensuring that we listen to a diversity of voices, diversity of partners, and there has been now an incredible uptake. One that I'm incredibly surprised about, but super happy, is the Convention on Biodiversity. For the Convention on Biodiversity to recognize that and call specific action to address gender-based violence and environmental linkages is a testament to our collective work together. We are also seeing through my work on climate, and Jamie, you were in Dubai where we launched our climate gender responsive work. We're now seeing countries, governments recognize that this is a really critical issue. And we all know this. What's not measured, what's not put in a plan, gets swept under the carpet. And so really important that it becomes institutionalized through reporting metrics, through templates like NDCs and others. So these are just small examples of how IUCN is ingrained deeply on this issue, and looking forward to collaborating with those that are with us on the call, being inspired by the winners to really learn and ensure that we scale up some of these learnings.
Thank you so much, Razan. And I really love what you are talking about here, because that is such a dream to institutionalize and cascade the learning and the dedication to paying thoughtful attention to these issues is really the dream that we all have together. And in the interest of time, I just have one last round of questions for you, Bama, and for you, board. I'd like to ask the both of you, where do you want to see the Rice Grants Challenge going in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years? And what role do you think we as IUCN can play to help get us there? And if I can start with Mr. Soyel with board, we'd like to get a response from you.
So happy to do that. And so I think maybe one thing that where the IUCN can play a role is to connect all the dots, you know, with your broad reach. I loved what Razan said. We have this tendency as humans, you know, to put things into silos and categories, and we kind of need to, you know, because we can't deal with everything, you know, at the same time. But so we need, you know, to have categories, but these are complex and intertwined, and especially when you come to issues of nature, of course they are. And I also think that we have underestimated, you know, the link between gender and environmental issues. Women are disproportionately and negatively affected by climate change, changes in biodiversity. Gender-based violence is needed to allow women's participation, which is essential to fight environmental problems. And I think you can play a role here. I would also add that I think, I mean, with your experience, your broad network, your ability to bring attention to the subject, to elevate experiences, I think you're a partner that can make the Rice Grants be bigger than the sum of its parts, really. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to join. So next year, 2025, we are planning on focusing on climate adaptation, another huge and important issue here. And we think that you, with all the partners, have the ability to really make this an important link and take it further.
Thank you so much. Bama, can I ask you the same question?
Sure, and I'll keep it brief because I think we're all very excited to get to the announcement of the winners, and also because Razan and board have said so much that I would just say and underscore that there's very little to add. I'm going to lean in on just three things to leave all of our colleagues who are joining today. One, we need to continue to learn. Two, we need to continue to invest. And three, we need to continue to influence. On the learning, I would just lean in on the excitement we have about the USAID supported IUCN Gender-Based Violence and Environment Linkages Center. And that's a resource that we hope will reach many who want to better understand these issues and how they can partner with us. The invest, once again, really working with IUCN as an entity that has that systems approach that Razan, you underscored, and that can direct resourcing in ways that have those transformative impacts. One thing that's very important to us at USAID is we are taking much greater focus on locally led development. And one of the things we can do through our agent partnership with you is to really ensure local grassroots women-led organizations are part of the solutions in terms of climate-related decision-making, both at community levels, but then now going on to the influence piece, I think modifying a kind of a saying that, something that we often say about acting locally and thinking globally, I would say we are acting locally and acting globally. And so on this final point, want to thank you for calling out in the opening slides, Jamie, the Women in the Sustainable Economies initiative that was launched by Vice President Harris is intended to be a big tent where more and more global actors that want to partner, governments, private sector, philanthropies, any sorts of large actors that want to partner and really think about the whole systems approach to advance gender equality in our work on climate conservation, biodiversity, and sustainable economies can join that big tent. So I'll leave it on that. Again, just thanking the other Razan board, your leadership on these issues, the leadership of your organizations, and let's get to the winners, shall we?
Yes, let's do it. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your important contributions and comments and statements. They really provide a strong ground for us to really think at that global level, the global pieces of how RISE fits into taking strides forward. So with that, let's go to the next slide because we are now here to announce winners. Let's cut that virtual ribbon. Let's do this. So first, I would love to invite Mr. Sohail Bard, if you could please announce the winner from Asia.
Well, and now I'll stay really close to script here. Exactly on it. So it's an honor to announce that Dun Church Aid, together with the National Indigenous Women's Federation and the Dalit Women Rights Forum, will be working in Nepal to address GBV affecting women and marginalized groups engaged in the protection, management, and use of community forests. Today, we also have the pleasure to be accompanied by Samjana Bista, Dun Church Aid Nepal country director, who will speak on behalf of the partnership, I believe.
Let's give a virtual round of applause for DCA and their partners. Thank you so much. And so now we're going to move to the Sub-Saharan African region. And please, Bama, if you could please do this the honor of announcing our winners from the region.
Thanks so much. My great pleasure to announce two winners from the Africa region. And as I announce you, I think we're just asking you to turn on your cameras for now, and give a wave so everyone can see and acknowledge you. First, it's my pleasure to announce that in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Action to Protect Women and Abandoned Children, or ASIFA, is receiving a new RISE grant. ASIFA, together with local partners, Women's Solidarity for Integrated Development, SOFEDI, and Support Group for the Integrated Management of Natural Resources for Human Rights and Sustainable Development, JIRANAD, and the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative are past RISE grantees and will continue to address gender-based violence while promoting environmental sustainability in mining towns that mine green energy transition minerals. And Annie Mwange, Director of ASIFA and President of the Women in Mining National Network in DRC, is here today. We want to thank you and to celebrate your recipient, being a recipient of this award. Congratulations. In Kenya, we will work.
Merci.
Can I continue? Okay, thank you so much. In Kenya, we will work with TMG Research. I think we need to go to the next slide. Thank you. Local partners, Shibuye Community Health Workers and Kenya Land Alliance and the Rainforest Foundation UK. They will scale up a tenure rights and gender-based violence monitoring and reporting tool that allows for decentralized reporting of rights violations to community-based organizations that will provide direct support to affected women. And we have Violet Shivutse, the founder and coordinator of the Shibuye Community Health Workers, representing the partnership. Congratulations, Ms. Shivutse, to you and your organization. Let's just have some virtual applause for these winners, and I will turn it back to you, Jamie, for the next announcement.
Thank you so much. And Razan, the floor is yours to help share the announcement for our winner from Central America.
Thank you. And I am extremely proud and pleased to announce that in Guatemala, yes, Justice Education Society, in partnership with the Foundation Network of Violence Survivors and the Ticonel Association, will be working with Guatemala's newest 100% indigenous, rural, women-owned farming cooperative to address gender-based violence impacting their access to natural resource management. We are thrilled that Ticonel, an IUCN, Indigenous Peoples Organization member, is amongst this partnership and look forward to learning about how this powerful consortium will work together and what they will achieve together. And I am delighted to welcome Azucena Cajas, project manager at the Justice Education Society in Guatemala, who will be representing the partnership today. Ms. Cajas, please turn your camera on so you may be acknowledged and celebrated. Congratulations to you and to your consortium, and let's give them a virtual round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much again to Mr. Soyel, Ms. Al-Mubarak, and Dr. Threya for announcing this new cohort of RISE. And for just a moment, if I can ask all of our winners and leaders to keep your cameras on for a second, we'll take a virtual picture together. Annie, if you can turn your camera on, and Jocelyn, that will be fabulous. Annie might have some connectivity issues, so Jocelyn might be standing in. Oh, Annie's here. Great, great. So we're just going to take a quick picture. Great. I think that should be enough time for that. So once again, thank you to our high-level panelists, to board, to Bama, and to Razan for the really engaging and wonderful discussion and announcement. But sincerely, most importantly, thank you to you, yourselves as leaders, and also your very dedicated teams that have really together believed in this dream of a safer and more equal environmental sustainability. And so we are so pleased that before we jump into our winners panel discussion, we're going to watch a very short winners announcement video about our newest winners. I'll turn it over to Jason to share that video with us. Thank you.
Gender-based violence
affects the lives of untold numbers of people, and its reach and impacts within environmental sectors and contexts are no different.
यसले जनजाति तथा विपन्न महिलाहरूको वन संरक्षण गर्ने क्षमतामा
Ni jina yangu ni Mama Kumbi Mangaza Magi. Niko mkaaji wa hapa Kailo, mzaliwa wa hapa Kailo.
My rights to land should be protected and gender-based violence should not be under dispossess me of my land.
Nosotras las mujeres indígenas debemos tener derechos a construir medios de vida sostenibles y basado en la naturaleza sin tener que sufrir violencia dentro de nuestros hogares.
Dans le cadre du défi de l'environnement, résilience inclusive et durable, ces fonds de cette subvention et les soutiens permanents vont apporter une aide urgente afin de traiter les cas de violences basées sur le genre et les liens avec l'environnement.
We are pleased to announce a new cohort of RISE Grants Challenge winners who will work collaboratively to improve safeguards from gender-based violence in environmental programming.
We will work to ensure carbon credit programs protect women's vulnerability to gender-based violence,
Visant à lutter contre l'extorsion et la coercition sexuelle dans le cadre de l'exploitation des minéraux liés à la transition écologique.
We will support an indigenous rural woman-owned farming cooperative to build women's economic empowerment while reducing their exposure to gender-based violence.
We will work with indigenous and marginalized women to protect them from gender-based violence threats.
Parce que nous sommes remplis de ressources.
Because we resist and defend.
Because we rise to protect.
Porque cultivamos y rompemos barreras.
Building momentum for more equal.
Bien sûr.
Resilient and inclusive.
Futuros sostenibles.
Thank you, everybody. We do apologize with Zoom. Sometimes the video does kind of skip a little bit, so we will post the YouTube video. It's actually live in just a few minutes online, and we hope that you enjoy it and you'll be able to share it. So in addition to our video, we'll also have online, starting right this moment, a new IUCN news story online that includes a quote from Razan and an overview of our winners. And we also have a fact sheet, the cover of which you can see here, so that you can learn more and meet our inspiring new winners. And so now it is such a pleasure for me to give the floor to Ruwani Dharmakirti, our IUCN RISE Grants Challenge Manager, to lead a discussion with our winners representatives. And if anyone has questions for Q&A, don't forget to send your responses. Otherwise, Ruwani, the floor is yours for you and the panelists.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and thank you and congratulations to all of our panelists and all of the winning organizations for joining us today to share more about your projects. If I can just ask that all of our grantee representatives, please turn your cameras on for this portion of the agenda. Thank you. Dr. Bista, your project in Nepal will work with indigenous Tharu women and Dalit women engaged in community forestry in the Kailari and Bajani municipalities. Could you tell us more about some of the gender-based violence challenges and risks that these women face in the context of forest management in the region?
Thank you so much, Ruwani. For some reason, I think, can you see me now?
I can see you, yes.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you everyone to see here, and thank you for choosing us. We are really very pleased and excited to be part of this project. So in response to your question, I would like to highlight on three major challenges and risks that women face. The Tharu community in Nepal represents 41.5% in especially the Kailali district, and they rely heavily on natural resources for their livelihood and food. Despite representing a large percentage of the population, Tharu people, they are often overlooked in decision-making process and forums and planning processes, which are mainly dominated by the elite community. Forest users frequently report being harassed, verbally abused, and slandered by security forces while accessing and using the forest-based resources for their livelihood. Another group of women environment human rights defenders, Dalit communities, who are also so-called the untouchables under the caste system in Nepal, they continue to face significant risk of violence while protecting the forest resources and while managing it. We have collected several stories, and we have witnessed and come across several things where it shows that they have been attacked while trying to stop wood smugglers, and they are tortured physically and mentally at the household level while they are conserving the forest, which is mainly voluntary. Thirdly, despite the women environment human rights defenders, they represent 1/3 of community forest user groups, executive committees. Their role is often overshadowed in decision making, especially when they are from the disadvantaged groups such as Dalit and Tharu community, which is the major target group for this process. This marginalization is even more aggravated. And some men consider shifting rights to women, and they consider it as a threat to their power and control over resources, which further entrenches gatekeeping of decisions and even risks of gender-based violence when women environment human rights defenders defy gender norms and engage in decision-making process and structures. Thank you so much. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for sharing more about the context and the risks and experiences of women and women environmental human rights defenders when the risks that they face when protecting and defending forest resources. One of your planned strategies to break social barriers and stigma includes working with journalists to ethically document and share experiences of gender-based violence in the forestry sector. How do you envision the role journalists can play in addressing these risks, and how will this activity complement other project activities?
Thank you so much, Rani, again for this question. DCA as an organization, we have worked closely with the journalists and media houses for many years in Nepal to document good practices, highlight the problems, and replication of stories. For that, we have provided fellowships and trained the journalists at the national and also at the local level in various issues. And media partnership always stays at the core of what we do and how we do. We have, however, realized that reporting human rights violation cases, such as gender-based violation cases, is quite technical, it's hugely sensitive and contains security risk to survivors, if not done properly and ethically. So therefore, working closely with the journalists to perform ethical reporting is a key, and that's why we have also proposed for this project. We will work very closely with women journalists, especially to cover the stories and elevate the voices of gender-based violence survivors. The journalist trainings will be conducted, including sessions on ethical considerations like sensitive coverage and confidentiality, survivor-centered and trauma-informed approaches, and do no harm approaches. The stories that will be covered will not disclose the personal information of the protagonist, and the project team definitely will ensure that all the stories go through assurance checks to ensure that these considerations are reflected, and before collecting any stories or before covering any cases, the survivors are well informed of the situation. Similarly, to add on, the journalists will also be mobilized to cover best practices that can be replicated to other parts of the country. And this will strengthen the recognition of environment human rights defenders as well, which is pretty low at this stage. And also it will give an opportunity to reflect and speak about the challenges women environment human rights defenders face and their role in the overall environmental programming. And these environmental programming may include climate-focused projects, nature conservation, biodiversity conservation, climate-induced disasters, etc. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bisto. We look forward to learning more as you start implementation. Now turning over to Ms. Mwanji. This is the second RISE grant you have received after being part of the very first RISE cohort. Could you tell us about the gender-based violence challenges that women face in artisanal and small-scale mining sites in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and why it matters for the green transition? Annie, over to you.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thank you once again for being chosen for this grant. It's a great opportunity for us, and so thank you on behalf of the whole team. In terms of challenges that women face in artisanal mining sites, women face many kinds of challenges in the small cities where mining activities take place. They are particularly vulnerable to violence, to sexual violence, and they are also vulnerable to economic exploitation and to marginalization uh, uh, in terms of what work is done in the mining site. So we did a study with the World Bank, which showed us that 1 out of 7 women has been pushed into prostitution or to other sexual exploitation in mining sites. And these women are harassed by men from the mining sector, and only 1 woman out of the 7 had spoken out about sexual harassment with other women. We also, well, the law in the DRC does provide protections for women, does provide protections for workers, especially for women working in artisanal mining. But to my knowledge, this law, this protection, has actually created a vicious cycle and actually contributed to the marginalization of these women. And the more they are marginalized, it creates a really big problem for them, a continuing problem. And so they need support from all kinds of stakeholders working in the mining sector. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing those insights, especially on how the women are marginalized and some of the risks that they face within the mining sector. You will also continue working in the provinces of Maniema, North Kivu, and South Kivu. How will your new project in the Democratic Republic of the Congo build on the previous one? Annie, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, I will keep working in Maniema, North Kivu, and South Kivu. With my former project, we had 2 training programs. We did trainings, kind of traditional trainings that focused on human rights protection and on sharing, or on working on gender norms. And then our second training program focused on creating more interactions between people who are working in the same place, and also more communication between men and the environment. So for this project, we are adopting a approach that is has more facets to better fight gender-based violence in mining cities in the East DRC. And so we're providing training to women, and we're trying to drive behavioral change within mining communities as pertains to sexual habits, both for women, and we're also focusing on environmental practices that contribute to all of that. So we're going to involve everyone, men and women, and hopefully that will contribute to the development of the country. We will also be working on protecting human rights and promoting good governance so that women can become more economically independent and have better access to resources. And so to do that, we will also promote collaboration between men and women, because that will help us to create positive momentum, working all kinds of women who are forced into sex work, and when they have other economic opportunities, that will help us reduce gender-based violence. within environmental programs. Because with my former project, we have already done the monitoring and evaluation of the impact of that project. And so that's given us a better idea of the disinformation that is present and that is contributing to tensions between men and women, and is making the interactions between humanity and the environment more negative. And all this contributes to gender-based violence in mining sites. But if we can train all of these different groups, if we can raise their awareness and help people organize themselves, I think then, people will not only have better economic situation, women's salaries will go up, people's salaries will go up, but I think it will also improve collaboration between men and women. They'll be able to work together, and more women will be named to decision-making positions within mining cooperatives and within other organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wanji. We look forward to seeing how this project builds and expands on the previous one. Now turning over to Ms. Shivutse. Your project in Kenya focuses on addressing tenure rights violations and gender-based violence in Trans-Nzoia, Cherangani, and Saboti sub-counties in Kenya. Could you tell us more about how climate change and carbon credit markets, which are becoming a popular alternative livelihood in the region, are linked to it?
Thank you so much on behalf of my 3 other partners and also myself as a caregiver and a woman that has worked so much on advancing women land rights. So what I want to say is that as grassroots women caregivers, we are always dependent on access to land to support our families and also for our livelihood. We are also key actors in sustainable management of natural resources. We play a key role in restoration, soil rehabilitation, agroforestry, and protection of the forests. The challenge often is that we are not recognized as key actors, and often we are denied accessibility to participating in decision-making in this kind of arena related to climate action. The carbon credits markets and forest conservation measures risks denying us women access to land and to forest, including forced evictions, violating our tenure rights. Companies and governments and male members of our communities usually exclude us from decision-making related to land and climate action, which exclude us from benefit sharing of the carbon credit. So environmental action therefore risks increasing marginalization of women instead of empowering us as agents of change during these carbon credit activities that will be happening. The climate action, including carbon credit markets, leads to so much land insecurity, increased competition to land, and monetary incentives that are going to come with. This will increase violation of women land rights by male members and neighbors. Evictions, forced evictions will be happening, and also more forms of gender-based violence, which includes abusive and physical violence, is likely to rise by excluding them from decision-making and other related. Therefore, it's from this that as our team, we are looking at how to enhance the capacity of grassroots women to understand how to be able to address these issues and be able to drive the change that they require and be seen as key agents in this process and their rights be protected. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shivutse, for sharing more about the links between climate action, carbon credit markets, and tenure rights and gender-based violence, but also for starting to share a little bit more about some of the strategies that your project will be implementing. I know that through your project, you aim to scale up and qualitatively expand a tenure rights and gender-based violence monitoring and reporting tool. How does this tool work, and how will you engage community-based organizations and other stakeholders through the information that you will gather?
Thank you so much. Our tool is called Haki Arthi tool. It is an inclusive, decentralized reporting tool that allows women to report on gender-based violence, land rights violations in a safe and accessible manner. Women can report on rights violation through toll-free SMS, through community outreach workers and paralegals, or by personally reporting in the offices of the community-based organizations that will be marked in Trans Nzoia County. These reports enable community-based organizations to report directly and support women in getting access to justice through judicial and non-judicial solutions. The case can be transferred to a national umbrella organization, Kenya Land Alliance, if higher level legal expertise is required to defend the women and settle the conflict. Through the reporting tool, communities contribute to systematic data collection that provide a clear understanding of the scope and nature of gender rights violation and gender-based violence in the context of climate action. This information is used for awareness raising about the rights of women and violations that they are facing, to engage community leaders, traditional chiefs, and other members of the community to discuss opportunities and find solutions together to better secure women gender rights. The collected information is also used for evidence-based advocacy towards policy makers and companies that are involved in climate action, including the carbon credit markets companies, to recognize the role that the women are playing in sustainable management of natural resources, and to respect and protect the women's rights to tenure in this context, and also promote quality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shavutse. We're excited to learn more about this reporting tool as you start implementation. Now turning over to Ms. Cajas. Your project in Guatemala works with Guatemala's newest 100% indigenous, rural, and women-owned farming cooperative in the municipality of Totonicapán to address gender-based violence. What are some of the gender-based violence risks present in the community, and how will you address them with the women from the cooperative?
Thank you for the question, Ruani. Well, gender-based violence risks are significant within the community. Although COPRODA offers a path to economic independence for women, the psychological abuse and control they face create substantial barriers to their full participation in the cooperative activities. Drawing from our previous experiences, we're aware that violence has been normalized among women in the community. To address this, we will partner with Fundación Sobrevivientes and implement their reflection group methodology. These sessions will help women identify various forms of violence, including psychological, sexual, physical, and economic, with the guidance of a psychologist. Through exercise aims at mitigating the psychological impact of abuse, raising awareness of rights, and building self-esteem, we aim to empower women to recognize and address violence in their lives. In addition of the psychological support, our partner Ticonel will provide training in environmentally sustainable solutions as well as business management. By enhancing women's economic independence, we aim to mitigate economic violence, which is a crucial step in enabling women to safely achieve financial autonomy. This empowerment not only enhances women's safety and equality, but also contributes to broader community development and economic growth. By strengthening individual lives, we can support systematic social and economic progress.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for touching on some of the strategies that you will be implementing together with your partners. I know that one of your planned strategies is to engage men and boys through positive masculinities. Could you tell us about why it's important to engage men and boys, and how you hope this will contribute to a safer environment for women to engage in cooperative activities?
Well, men's involvement in projects like ours is crucial in combating gender-based violence and creating a safer environment for women. Through demonstrating respect and supportive behavior, men can set community standards that discourage violence. Engaging men in educational initiatives also helps address potential backlash against women gaining independence, fostering understanding and support for women's empowerment. When men receive education on preventing gender-based violence, they are more likely to advocate for women's rights and their inclusion in decision-making within their communities. Additionally, it's important for us to engage with younger men in specifically the communities that we're working on. Many household heads are absent, So young men often assume the role, and we are finding out that they're perpetrating learned behaviors. So by involving young men, we can break cycles of violence and promote a more inclusive community for the women of Coproda.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cajas, and thank you so much to all of our panelists. Congratulations once again. I will now go ahead and hand over back to Jamie to take us through the next agenda point.
Thank you again to Rwani and all of our winners representatives. So now I have the privilege and the honor and the excitement to announce the launch of the 2024 RISE Grants Challenge Call for Proposals, which is now live on our website. You can access the Call for Proposals document through the QR code that you see here on your presentation, and we'll also be shortly sending an email announcing the opening of this call, as well as sharing the recording from today's session. So the Call for Proposals document is a comprehensive document that provides a breakdown of the thematic and geographic scope, the full application process, templates, and also includes important eligibility requirements and other important information. So as we are launching the call for proposals before the window for applications in the system opens, it means that you have ample time and opportunity to read through all of the requirements and get more familiar with RISE before starting an application. And in the interim, we encourage you to please send any questions that you may have to RISE, R-I-S-E, at IUCN.org. And also the call for proposals document is available in English, Spanish, and French. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of our thematic scope for 2024, the RISE Grants Challenge will seek proposals that adopt strategies to prevent, mitigate, and respond to the risk of gender-based violence and environmental linkages in the context of the dual global biodiversity and climate crisis. And as we've alluded to and touched on earlier in this event today, there is also an earmark for at least several projects that will be specifically addressing gender-based violence in fisheries sectors. So that means that there will be a few projects dedicated to fisheries, and the rest of the grants are open to projects that address the dual crisis of biodiversity and climate change in regards to gender-based violence. The call for proposals document, again, highlights all of these priority themes, and each award will be between $100,000 to $400,000 US dollars, and we will have a total of $1.8 million to grant for this round this year. Next slide, please. This year, we have a different geographic scope, and you'll see the list of countries here on the right of the screen. This year, the projects must either be implemented in one or more of the 18 eligible countries that you see here, or be a non-area-based project focused on global policy related to addressing gender-based violence in the environment sector. The call for proposals document, again, also outlines these requirements, and you'll see that there are selected countries from Asia Pacific, Latin America, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And just to go through that in a little bit of more detail, in the Asia region, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam are eligible countries. In Latin America, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, Mexico, and Peru are countries of eligibility. And also in Sub-Saharan Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ghana, Kenya, Madagascar, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zambia are also eligible countries. And again, there is an opportunity to also apply for a non-area-based global policy project. Next slide, please. So in terms of what's next, first we will hold an informational webinar on May 9th at 9 a.m. EST, and that session will also be recorded and disseminated, and that session will dive into deeper detail as a tutorial on how to apply for RISE funding. So please be sure to register for that event. We'll go through how the online application system works. We'll go through the templates. We'll go through some of the thematic scopes. And we'll also use that as an opportunity to answer your questions about the application process. Then the window for the application system will open the following day on May 10th. So that means that from now until May 9th, everyone has 2 weeks to review the call for proposals, procedure and document, review the website, which has the milestones and the shorter version of key things to keep in mind. And then May 9th, we'll do a deep dive tutorial on how to apply and how the system for submitting applications will function. And then the following day, the application system will open, and that's when applications can start to be filled into the system. So once that happens, you will have 1 month to submit an expression of interest. So that window closes on Friday, June 7th at 11:59 p.m. EST time. And please kindly note that late and incomplete submissions will not be accepted. As well with everything else, the expression of interest can be submitted in English, French, and Spanish, and the system will also be available to support you in English, French, and Spanish. After this initial period of the kind of grant searching process is concluded, the team will be reviewing the eligibility of the applications, and there will then be another process where a shorter number of selected applicants will be invited to submit full proposals for consideration, for shortlisting, for interviews, and then going into the due diligence process. So it is a longer process, but for now, what we really want to focus on is ensuring that you have the information needed to dive into the call for proposals document, study the thematic scope and the eligibility requirements, and join us for the webinar on May 10th. Ask us your questions. We'll also take all the questions we receive from you via email and via that event and produce a frequently asked questions document that we will publish transparently for everyone to have access to. And again, the applications for the expressions of interest, which is a very short application process, will be due Friday, June 7th at 11:59 p.m. EST, and full proposals will be through an invitation process at a later time, about sometime in July. And so with that, we can go to the next slide. And this was our last announcement for today's event. We have come to the close, and we want to thank you again so much for joining us. And we really look forward to seeing, hopefully, many of you at the informational webinar in 2 weeks. Again, please do look out for your inboxes. We hope by the end of today that we'll be able to send you the recording to this event, the documents and the videos that we've referenced throughout this event, and also to announce and share the links directly with you on the open call for the 2024 Rice Grants Challenge proposal process. So until then, we wish you have a wonderful day, and we wish everyone bright, sustainable, and more equal futures. And again, thank you to our new winners, and let's give them a final round of virtual applause. Thanks, everyone.